What's up? My name is Blue Boy. Welcome back to the channel, and today we got an interesting video. Now, this was a request from one of my members. Now, join my membership, by the way. I think this is a really cool idea. So this video is largely going to be a guide to getting started reading Warhammer, because even though I am a lore YouTube channel, I believe the best method to get your 40k lore is from the source itself, the books, and you should read them anyways. They're very good. Because, I mean, you can get your lore from the wiki, but like the fandom wiki sucks. It's full of like headcanons and unsourced claims. You can get it from YouTube channels like mine, and like while you should stay and watch this, because unlike me, who has never been incorrect at all in the history of this channel ever, don't check me on that, even lore channels can mess up and give you wrong information, or just are really fucking biased. Because if I were to cover the perfect faction in 40k, the best one ever, the Adeptus Custodes, I would cover it in a lot better than I would, say, if I tried to cover the worst factions in the game, like the absolute dregs, the bottom of the barrel, the Eldar. I would never intentionally make a bad video, but I'm just more invested in one topic over the other. Which is why I recommend reading the books, because you can pick out the faction you want, written for fans of that faction, and get a better story. But here's the problem. There are a lot of books, like a fucking lot. And you see the question, same question pop up. Where do I start? Where do I start? Well, I'm gonna try to hopefully answer that for you. Or if you're not a newcomer to 40K, also just be giving a handy reading list. These are a lot of books that I've personally read and had experiences with, bar for a few. So they're recommendations. Every book I'm gonna talk about today are personal recommendations that I've read myself. But first up, these are gonna be, if you're brand new, these are the books I recommend you start with. The first ones you pick up. The first one is like the most obvious choice, and honestly is one of the most like often touted. Read the Eisenhorn Trilogy by Dan Abnett. Now, if you see the Dan Abnett tag on a book, if he wrote it, it's going to be a banger. And Eisenhorn is no exception, because Eisenhorn is probably one of the coolest characters in 40k, because he is just James Bond in space, but an Inquisitor. And it's also an excellent way to get used to a lot of the factions and powers that be in 40k, especially the Inquisition, with the differentiating between the radical and puritanical Inquisitors, how the Ordos work. It's very cool. It is an excellent action mystery romp. Oh my god, it's a spy novel in 40k. Rules. Or if you're a little too lazy, you could play the mobile game of Eisenhorn that is a one-to-one recreation of the first book. This is a thing that exists, and it sucks ass. And also, fun little thing, the voice acting sucks, except for Eisenhorn, who's voiced by Mark Strong, who's the guy who voices Captain fucking Titus from the Space Marine game. It's a thing that exists. The next one is one that I'm still admittedly working through. It's long, and I have other books that are ahead of it. We have the Night Lords Trilogy. This one is another series that's touted as one of the best in 40k, and this is an excellent method to get the chaos perspective. It gives a really, really nice perspective on how absolutely deplorable chaos factions are, especially the Night Lords, the worst of the worst. And there's a lot of just great shit at play here. Fantastic characters. Talos is a fucking Chad. Love this man to death. And just really casual, like, horrific acts. There's a part I'm not going to spoil that I adore that has to do with Night Lords coming across a mining expedition fleet. Not going to spoil it, just read the books. I do recommend this one, and sooner or later I'll get to book 2 and 3. But I have one more major starting point that I have a lot to say about. So real quick, to get ahead of it, I'm going to give you a small bunch of recommendations, just 3, that are other really good starting points that I've been recommended to personally. However, I have yet to read them. And this is also a self-call-out post, because I have not read them. And the first one's extra embarrassing. It's Gaunt's Ghosts, that whole series by Dan Abnett also. I have not read, sadly. I love Commissars, I love the Imperial Guard, and I'll get to it eventually. But the book series rules. It is another really good example of a great introductory point, because it gives the human perspective of just the Guard and how they deal with the horrible, horrible things in 40k. And then just 2 real quick. I've heard very good things about Nightbringer, the Ultramarines book, and the Space Wolf book. I know next to nothing about them. I don't know what they're about, anything about them. They just keep being thrown in my face as good starting books. So check those out if you like Ultramarines or Spaceballs. But if, say, none of those books tickle your fancy, because maybe you're not a Chaos or Imperium guy like I am, just find the faction you like the most and find their most popular book. Most factions have an omnibus of some sort, and just read it. Because at the end of the day, 40k is a thing where you're gonna be attached to the thing you like, and there's no point wasting your time with stuff you're just not gonna be a fan of. If you like the Mechanicus, read the Mechanicus books. If you like the Eldar, read an Eldar novel. Like, that's gonna be the best for you. It's the exact same advice I give people who are trying to get started in the game. Your best starting entry point, be it the tabletop game or the lore, is what you like, what aesthetically just pleases you the most. But here we are. Now we get to talk about the giant, way too massive elephant in the room, the Horus Heresy series. Now this is a series that you can make a decent argument, and I've heard a couple arguments from this that I agree with to some extent. That's maybe the Horus Heresy isn't the best place to start out in. You need all this context for everything to land right, and I don't know, I'm not your dad, you can do what you want. I don't care. I did this. I started with Horus Rising. It was one of that's my second Warhammer book I read ever, and I'm fine. Lots of other people did too, and they're fine too, probably. But here's the funny little issue. If you take into account the published novels, the novellas, the anthologies, you know, the main books that are published, there are over 130 books. And I'm not counting like the audio dramas and like the spin-off stuff, a comic that was made, like I'm not counting that stuff. There's more. It's a lot. Which then leads to the question, how do you read the Horus Heresy? I mean, there's the method I'm currently doing, and I think you can make an argument that it's the best, but you know, it's on you. Just read it chronologically. Read the main Horus Heresy books, like the 60-something books or something, and just read them in order of release. I mean, that's how things are released anyways, just in chronological order, with the expectation you've read the one before. But you know what? That doesn't take into account all the little short stories, the audio drama, like the other stuff that adds really nice context. Which is why I want to share with you something I discovered, and I've been talking to the creator of, the Horus Heresy Omnibus Project. The Horus Heresy Omnibus Project is a genuinely really cool fan project to catalog the Horus Heresy into omnibuses. Like, for example, just showing off the first one right here, Horus Rising. It's got the mainline 5 books with like little short stories interspersed. These are like parts that are very important to the context of the main books in this series, but those books are gonna come like a lot later. So, you know, get that immediate gratification or extra context of a scene that might come up in the next book. So I'm gonna go into this, but if you just want this right off the bat, links to the site are in the description as well. I've been talking to Tim, or Free Ukulele on Twitter. This guy rules. He's doing a really good job with all this. Give him a follow on Twitter. Like, he deserves it. Because like, in talking to him, the entire point of this project is accessibility. Not everyone's made for time, and not everyone wants to go through the homework of figuring out where to start, what books to read, like all that stuff. So this site is laid out to get you started in the Horus Heresy, like give you the context you need going into it. Excellent just resource guides, and the thing I really like, written articles on why the books were selected for each omnibus. Like, excellent work. Or maybe you don't want to actually read them in order. Another thing this project does is it gives you the key like events of the Horus Heresy timeline, sections them off into blocks with actually a very well-designed flowchart. A nice designed flowchart that gives you a nice easy flow to follow the storylines you like. Because, you know, you might not be a fan of like the Iron Warriors or the Emperor's Children. Well, here's some like paths to just avoid it. You don't have to deal with it. Go read about the Night Lords, go read about the Dark Angels, all that stuff. Also, little fun like surface level thing, really fun pixel art. I love these like pixel art Space Marines, the little pixel art custodians, I love them. It's got a real nice charm to it and an excellent project. So if you want a fun method to read through the Horus Heresy that isn't just read it in chronological order, because it's a lot, give this a chance, just look through it. But speaking of flowcharts, say for example, you're not made of time, like most people actually. Most regular folk, not Warhammer fans, were made of it. And you don't want to read through chronologically, you don't want to go through an omnibus project, like that's too much work. You just want to cherry pick stuff Well, I mean, you can just cherry pick the storylines. All you have to do is follow the big flowchart. Just follow along with the easily paced storylines. So easily digestible, right? Like, I love this flowchart. I think it is well designed. Like, it is, the people who made it did a good job, but like, this is so funny to me. I think this is a really funny thing to, out of context, show someone who's like, hey, you into Warhammer? Yeah, you should check out the Horus Heresy. Look at this. Here's all the books you can read. You can do it. It's not the method I'd recommend. Personally, you're missing out on a lot of stuff, especially if you make the horrible decision and skip the first 5 books, which are absolute heat. I'm working through Fulgrim right now, and I'm adoring it. I never thought in 1,000 years I'd say something positive about the Emperor's Children and Fulgrim, but here I am, loving the story. So yeah, you can do this. Like I said, I'm not your dad. I don't care what you do with your free time. Do whatever you want. I wouldn't recommend it, but go wild, dude. Have fun. So, all right, that's like the starting guide done. Now, I'm just gonna rattle off some of my personal favorite books. Books I just have been recommending. I've recommended these a good number of times on my channel. So this is Blue Boy's reading guide. Read these books, please. This is not a request. First up is Caiaphas Kane, my absolute favorite series in 40k. My favorite 40k character. I love this cowardly man. He's perfect in every way. And I also have a video on Caiaphas Kane where I'm gonna go in more detail. I started out with Caiaphas Kane. It's the first book I read, 40k, for the Emperor. First one I did. I don't recommend that, because a lot of the humor of the Caiaphas Kane books comes with having the context of all of the universe. So if you're like just starting out, I don't know, it wouldn't be the one I recommend, but this book series rules. It's hilarious, it's gripping, it's got like really good storytelling and some of the funniest dialogue I've ever read. So please give it a read if you haven't. I don't know how you are a 40k fan and haven't read Caiaphas Kane, because everyone like touts how good the series is. But yeah, check out my video on him and check out the book series. The next one is one I'll be very upset if you haven't read. The Infinite and the Divine. Another one of my absolute favorite 40k books. Like, it is Caiaphas Kane and then Infinite and the Divine. It is so also funny. I like the funny 40k books. Now this one follows the exploits of Trazyn the Infinite and Orikin the Diviner, two really fun Necron characters, as they eventually go through like a buddy cop romp, hunting down this one MacGuffin where they're forced to fight each other and fight with each other. There's a lot going on in this essentially 2 old men bickering for the entirety of the book, and it's so good. It's an excellent thing of the humor of these characters and also how sad Necrons are, because Necrons are perfect because of how fun they are on the surface and deep down in their robot cores, depressing as fuck. So give it a read, please. Another one I'm gonna recommend is the Volta Terra series, another fantastic one. And this one's really cool and gives a lot of really fun lore from like the source. Now this one follows 2 Inquisitors who are stationed on Terra, and they have to defend against all the threats of humanity on Terra. The biggest hive world, dense, billions upon billions of people doing a pilgrimage every day to Terra. It's a lot, and there's a lot of things that can get through the cracks. These are the guys who solve that issue. That and the main Inquisitor is really cool. His quirk with having this like relic revolver that he gets really upset every time he has to shoot it is really fun. And also there's another reason you could read it. I don't possibly know why I picked the Volta Terra series. What about this cover says that I would like this book? I don't know. The other thing that's really fun with like the first book especially is it gives a lot of context for what the average Imperium citizen believes. Because there's a really fun scene where like one of the main characters, she goes into a church, and it's a church dedicated to the 9 Primarchs. And what they teach is that the nine sons of the Emperor, handcrafted by him, were tasked to fight and kill the 9 evil creations of the Chaos Gods and the evils that be. And they have to have the glorious fight that some of them lost, but they're all now like saints because of it. It's a really fun rewriting of the Horus Heresy, very charitable in the Emperor's eyes. So yeah, if you want a good example of Imperium propaganda, read this book. And other than that, if you're a Audible guy, like I am. Because when I say read, I've actually listened to all these books because I am a ADHD, TikTok mind, befuddled Gen Z kid. So I can't sit down and read anymore. I don't get the instant gratification. So I listen to all these books. And if you're there, you should listen to Our Martyred Lady and The Watcher in the Ring. Both of these are so good. Also, the sheer delight that Catherine Tate played the main character in like Our Martyred Lady, that's great. She's a great actor. But the final recommendation I'll give, my favorite Warhammer books ever, bar none. Caiaphas Kane, who heard of him? Trazen and Oregon, pff, get him out of here. This one is great because it's not even 40k. I'm talking about Gotrek and Felix, Warhammer Fantasy. Now, I'm not a big Warhammer Fantasy guy until recently, where I've been playing Total War Warhammer 3 a lot. And Gotrek and Felix is a great story of a dwarven slayer and a human ex-noble having to go through adventures and killing everything that touches them. A dwarf slayer is a dwarf that has done some horrible thing in his past and has to redeem himself to the dwarf god by dying in glorious combat. But there's one problem. Gotrek is a really bad slayer because he's incapable of not killing his enemies horribly and brutally. He is described as a sheer force of nature that you should not get in front of. And then both characters are great, they get along great. Read their books, and if you just want an extra better method of selling it, my favorite Warhammer YouTuber like on this site, Pancreas No Work, he has a great video on Gotrek and Felix, going through a lot of the fun stuff, just really well pitching the series. Go watch his video on it if you haven't yet, and pick up Troll Slayer if you haven't. It's fantastic. I'm on Skaven Slayer right now, and I'm absolutely adoring it. I'm only 2 deep in like 10 more books to go. But it's like the best Warhammer read I've ever had. But yeah, that's my book recommendations. Hopefully there's a new book on your horizon, and for some of the books I mentioned that I'm still working through, I'm using this as a kind of motivation to finish a lot of these series. I'm working through the Horus Heresy. I have a few other series that I actually need to wrap up. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And also, if there's anything else, recommend books you love in the comments, please. I'm always looking for more 40k books. I always want to read more of lore, especially for factions I just don't touch. So give your own personal recommendations in the comments, especially for new readers who might want some fun alternate picks instead of the ones I chose. But anyways, that's it. Like, comment, subscribe, join my membership, do that stuff, and see ya.